I think the same reasons for the media attacks against me, for the deportations, and all the rest, the same reasons are behind the attacks on Stone and JFK. The film violates Bernays' law, which I just read. It defies manipulation by the minority, that is, the cover-up by the Warren Commission back in the 1960s. That's why so many mainstream analysts, journalists, and political figures have denounced the film. The one I like best, I think, was Senator Moynihan's op-ed piece in the New York Times. I don't know if any of you saw that. But Moynihan wrote that the worst thing about JFK is that people under 30 or people under 40 are going to believe that Kennedy was killed by people in his own government. Well, in other words, the film is subversive. It's seditious. It foments doubts about the legitimacy of the political system. It shakes blind loyalty and the conformity, which is the real PC affliction, not multiculturalism. It undermines the conformity to which every one of us is subjected to at every level of our educations. If JFK does this, at least, if it creates doubt as to the legitimacy of the political system, then I say wonderful. Bravo, Oliver Stone. By the way, Stone was in Hamburg, where I live, just about 10 days ago, for the German premiere of JFK. And he told me that the attacks on this film from going on nearly a year ago don't bother him in the least. He rattled off a whole list of high-level people in the Kennedy administration who are confirming to him and in public that Kennedy indeed intended to withdraw from Vietnam. And it's no bad thing either that the film has jump-started the move to make public those 850 boxes or more of classified documents which are a holdover from the investigation of the Kennedy and King assassinations in the late 1970s. And I asked also how the film is doing at the box office, and I'll share that with you. In the first month of the film, it earned $50 million against a budget of $40 million, and they had stayed under the budget. And I think something like 650,000 people had gone to see the film. Well, that means a lot of people are seeing it, and a lot of people are getting the message. No wonder the manipulators in the minority are upset.
When this decision was made in 1950 to rearm in the United States and for the U.S. to finance the rearmament of Western Europe and this military economy that started then and that we still live with today, there was no threat from the Soviet Union. The Soviets were still digging out of the rubble of World War II. They'd lost 20 million people, and they were no threat at all. But there had to be a justification for this rearmament for economic purposes, a so-called Keynesian militarism. And the Soviet Union was then created as a threat. And it was because the United States and Western Europe became a threat to them that they had to then join the arms race, which eventually drove them broke. The CIA's job was, of course, to assess the threat from the Soviet Union, and they overestimated all through the years. And their estimates were taken seriously by the Congress, which then voted far more funds for U.S. defense over many years than they had to, because the threat from the Soviets were overblown. Well, this is the problem of politicized intelligence. And this was very much in the news during the Gates confirmation hearings, where CIA officers former and serving, went on public record before the committee, the Senate committee, describing cases in which Gates demanded that, or Casey demanded that a particular Soviet estimate come out a certain way, rejecting what the best estimate of the analysts were. And this was especially true in what was known as the Soviet analysis division. So I think that it's a mixed thing as far as the intelligence production through the years has been. Certainly the CIA missed the breakup of the Soviet Union. They didn't realize what was going on. They didn't anticipate it either. And at the same time, they were working to try to foment the disintegration of the Soviet Union. They've been doing that for many years. And Jack Bloom, who was the counsel to the Kerry Subcommittee on Drugs and Narcotics, some of you may be aware of what this subcommittee has done through the years to try to expose the or to get into the possible U.S. government, including CIA, knowledge or action against the drug trade. And Bloom, for one, has stated that he believes that the CIA was putting millions upon millions of dollars through the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, this corrupt bank, and the money was going out to the nationalist movements in the Soviet Union to try to, and various other activities, to try to foment regionalism and nationalism, which would weaken the unity of the Soviet Union over many years. And certainly the radios that the CIA had set up around 1950, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, they were always fomenting divisions. So certainly the CIA had something to do with it. And Bush, at that speech in Washington, where he denounced me by name, this is the one in October at the banquet, black tie banquet in Washington, as part of his speech he did denounce the naysayers, the critics of the national intelligence system, and particularly of the CIA. And he said something to the effect that no one knows how important the CIA's work was in the developments that have occurred, meaning the collapse of the Soviet Union and the communist governments in Eastern Europe. So that's the action side, though, as opposed to intelligence collection.